Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of The Learning Curve with Ramya Deepak. As an educator, I know firsthand the importance of continuous learning and development and the critical role that education plays in shaping the future generation. Through this series that I hope to do monthly, I hope to explore the various facets of education and bring together experts who can share their knowledge and insights with us. To kick off my series, though, I've chosen a very special day, the eve of International Women's Day. And today we have the opportunity to discuss a topic that is very close to my heart, the representation of women in educational leadership. With me today, I have an educational leader, an expert in her field, an exceptional leader who has made significant contributions to education and who will share her perspectives on how we can improve the representation of women in educational leadership. Throughout the discussion, we ask you to engage with us and ask questions, share your own experiences and insights using the chat function. This session will be recorded and I will be posting a link on my social media platforms after that. So if you do engage with the recording, we ask you to still send in your questions and insights through my social media channels. And that way, I hope we can continue the conversation and we can promote gender equity and empower women to take on leadership roles. So without further ado, let me introduce to Meenah Marchbank. Welcome, Meenah. Meenah is a former principal and accredited International Coaching Federation coach, running her own solution-focused service called Coach to Blossom, and a principal mentor with the Academy and DEET, working with educational leaders to achieve outstanding outcomes. With over 35 years experience working in primary and F-12 schools, developing processes to move staff through the significant changes that occur in their workplace, Meenah loves working with principals, assistant principals, leading teachers, leadership teams, graduates, and everyone in between. Geez, Meenah, that's a lot. So welcome and thank you for your time and generosity today. Let us start by knowing a little bit more about you and just understanding what motivated you to pursue a leadership role in education, and what were some of the successes and challenges as a woman in this field?
I think one of the things that motivated me were some terrific educational leaders in my early days of teaching, and a couple of colleagues who were very supportive. And then I started to step into a leadership field, which I had never considered before. But I saw the way that people did it, and as many individuals are, I thought, I'd like to try that a different way. And so that motivated me to have a go at looking at the concept of leadership, which had never, ever occurred to me before.
So I guess the reason why this topic came to my mind today is because we know in education, women are represented. I think the statistics say that about 65% or more women are teachers in primary school and in secondary schools. But then when it comes to leadership, that percentage drops off. And I know there are people like Barbara Waterston from ACEL talks about that we need to explore this phenomenon as to why there's this discrepancy. So have you noticed that something similar, Meenah?
Absolutely. In fact, when I first became a principal, I think it was 1992 or 93, probably 93, the statistics were around about 70+% of teachers were were female, and 27% of principals were female. All the rest of leaders were male. So that was a really big discrepancy then. Things have certainly changed. However, there's still so much room for us to build on that. And there were certainly affirmative action programs back in the day, and very controversial, but in many ways successful. And then the Department of Education ran some terrific programs like the High Performing Principals, which enabled us to go and study something. I studied educational reform over in the UK. It really enabled us to take on a much broader perspective, not just the school perspective. And there were a number of opportunities there. I was also fortunate to get study leave, part-time study leave. I would have been able to do that without those sorts of initiatives. So the department And the system plays a very important role in enabling us
absolutely.
to grow into our work.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I came across was this: tomorrow is International Women's Day, and this year's theme is about embracing equity. And the talk about, it's not just something nice to have; it's a must-have. So and I guess it's also talking about, making sure that we are fostering a cultural diversity and equity in terms of education background, in terms of, all the other things that we talk about in education. So my question, I guess, then is, how can we foster that culture of diversity and equity and inclusion in education? So make sure that, as women of all backgrounds experience that success. So when we are talking about women in leadership, we are not just talking about a particular subsect or any of that. And especially, in today's day and age, we're talking about, women of color, women with disabilities, LGBTQ women, and all of that. So how can we kind of make sure that we have that equitable strategies for everyone?
Okay, there are a number of things that are essential. Remembering that it's against the law to discriminate against people in any of those categories. Remembering that we have come a distance in that. I can remember in my second principal job, I walked in the door and the next day a young lady came up to me and said, look, I want to tell you I'm really scared that I'm going to get into trouble. I'm a lesbian, something, something, something. I said, well, it's against the law for me to discriminate against you for that, and it's against the law for anyone to treat you any differently. So let's go from there and let's respect. Oh,
Sorry, I'm
Philippa,
just going to.
Yes.
you can turn your voice, your sound off, please. Sorry. I can see your camera.
Yeah, I'm not sure how.
I
Sorry.
have.
Yeah,
Don't worry. She'll turn her camera off. She'll turn her voice off. That's all good. Okay.
yeah,
So those, we must remember that it's against the law. We also must remember that it's against our human nature to actually do that. We must respect. If you respect the people you come in contact with, every interaction will be a better interaction.
absolutely.
We don't have to love them. Although, like when we're working with our kids, walk into a school, there's a lot of love around. Those teachers love their kids. I love
Yeah,
those kids. And schools come on
absolutely.
that. But
Yeah,
that's not an actual essential. It's
yeah,
a really, really excellent place to start. So
yeah,
respect, integrity, honesty, all of those values that we espouse will bring a benefit to everybody. And we know, Ramya, you and I both know that there have been
yeah,
occasions when we will have been discriminated against for whoever
absolutely.
we are. And
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
the importance of being able to acknowledge what people bring to the table and build. Everybody brings something to the table.
Yeah,
Everyone has talents, and so
absolutely.
we acknowledge them, we build on them, we thank
Yeah,
them and celebrate them.
yeah. Absolutely. And that's true. And that's the thing about beauty about diversity, isn't it? It's that the perspectives you get is the different perspectives you get from people from different backgrounds, and, the experiences they have had, and the knowledge they have, and all of that brings in those different lenses to education that you on your own probably cannot have,
Exactly. Well,
as
we're a perfect example of that, Ramya.
yeah, we are.
I had no knowledge of Indian culture or anything, and then you came to the school. I learnt so much. You shared, all of our community shared at Cambridge Primary.
Absolutely.
There was such great camaraderie there in the
Yeah,
community. I always say that that's how you should bring up a child in a school with so many nationalities.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I can say the same, for our listeners today, and it's glad to see that we have 8 or 7 audience members listening in. Listeners today, Meenah was my first principal. She was one of the reasons why she is one of the reasons why I made the switch from my scientist career to education. So it's actually worked out perfectly that here we are starting. I am here kicking off the series and having Meenah as my first guest. But it's just and I have learned so much from Meenah, and that and coming from a different background, having had my education in a different country, I mean, there was so much to learn for me as well. But at the same time, I could see what I could bring to the plate as well. So I think, and that's where we have come from.
Yes, and I learned so much, so much. And I think that's another thing that's really important in education. I'm ever curious. I always
Yeah,
want
absolutely.
to know something else. And we encourage that curiosity in kids. And it's really important. You see the teachers who build with those relationships with their students. It's their curiosity. It's in learning something new. We
Absolutely.
never just sit still in our role. We're constantly moving.
Absolutely, Meena. Totally agree with you on that. And that brings me to the next question, which was about it's about the policies and initiatives that you have seen promoting women leadership. But correct me if I'm wrong. Back in 2016 or 17, were you part of that Women in School Leadership program, and you went to India for that or something like that?
That would have been, I think it was about, it was part of the Studies of Asia. So that's when I
Oh,
went
yep. It
to
was.
India. So it would have been before that,
Yeah.
possibly 2012. Um, and
Oh, yep. Sorry.
and I was also fortunate to go on a Studies of Asia tour of Myanmar, because we had many
Yeah.
Burmese families at our school, beautiful Burmese
Yeah.
families, and we were able to support them in what they were doing. We had a homework club, and I just can remember talking to those mums of the Burmese, the children from Myanmar. One of the mums had had her 5 children in a camp on the
Mm,
Thai border,
mm,
and I
mm.
just brought in some knitting needles on request or something like, and some wool. And one of the women was saying, "Gee, it's good to be able to knit with actual knitting needles, not pieces of wood." You know, um,
Yeah.
the things we take for granted, and that
Yeah.
that just deepen our.
Yeah. It just that your tour of yours, and you're right, it was probably in 2013 or something, stuck to my mind because I remember you visiting a school, and then that lady principal from India coming here as well. So so obviously women in education leadership is an issue, global issue. It's not, I mean, it's a global thing that we are talking about. It's not just in Australia. And so, have you come across any other policies or initiatives that I know you kind of touched on that already,
Yeah,
the department is doing
yes,
to
some of
promote?
the
Yeah,
professional learning that they enable, and of course, one of the very famous ones was the Eleanor Davis program,
yeah,
which many women attribute their promotions or their interest in leadership. Um,
mm,
so currently, I'm not aware of any specifically for females, but there is a lot more middle leadership programs. There
yeah,
are a lot more middle leadership programs run
mm,
by Vatul, and
mm,
they, therefore, I find when I work with any of those attendees, they are really keen
mm-hmm,
to really develop their leadership and.
yeah,
And the other thing is the PLC coaching, um, that,
yeah,
and I often work with middle leaders in that, and I'll sit with,
yeah,
people spring to mind immediately, the wonderful Kate and Tegan from last year, who had no
mm,
concept that they would be able to lead,
mm,
and
yeah,
in fact ran a PD about PLCs
mm,
at the end of the year in their
mm,
school and did a fabulous job. So
absolutely,
sometimes it's just a matter of alerting people to the fact that they have those skills,
yeah,
because so many people don't. They take what we do for granted, and
Yeah.
including mums. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. We take that all for granted. But if you walk into any classroom, amazing things are happening. I
Absolutely.
was using,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was referring
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
your, how you celebrate mistakes in your classroom. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Oh no. So Meenah's talking about neurons, and this work comes from the Joe Bowler's work about mathematical mindset. And early on in my journey as learning specialist numeracy, when I started at my current school, I came across a lot of mathematical anxiety, not just in students but in teachers as well. And that is something I think a lot our society deals with a lot. People are afraid of maths or think maths is this big, thing that can't be done or is too hard. So we spoke about that, and a lot of that comes from the fear of making mistakes because they think math is either right or wrong, and therefore they're afraid to get it wrong. So we spoke about how every time we make a mistake, our brain actually grows. And I know we give this message to students a lot, but I kind of made it a story around it, and that how our brains are made of little cells called neurons, and those neurons have connections with each other. And every time we make a genuine mistake, a new connection is formed, and that's how the learning gets stored in your brain. So every time, so for example, babies, when they are crawling and they come across a hot kettle, first time they don't know it's hot, so they probably touch it and then they go, oh, it's hot. And then when they do that, there's a neuron that fires in the brain, and there's a connection that formed. And therefore next time they see something like a kettle, that neuron fires and go, remember, that's hot, we don't touch that. And that's how things get stored. So therefore, mistakes are actually really valuable to make those connections, and that's how learning happens. And so the kids actually love that, and so they have started coming back to us and retorting. Like if we say you made a mistake, they go, "Oh, I didn't make a mistake. I made a new connection in my brain." So that's that kind of thought process
And
behind that.
and the reason I asked you to tell me that beautiful story, which I love, was because I think that's how we build leadership.
Yeah,
Many women are afraid, A, to say, I'm good
yeah,
enough to be a leader, or B,
yeah,
to think that they know what they're doing. And in
yeah.
fact,
True.
it is up to us to draw to their attention the amazing skills that they have.
Yep,
I love to watch teachers in action. They are
absolutely.
so highly skilled. They are so caring. They're so compassionate. They manage, meltdowns. They manage so many remarkable things. That's this. I'm talking all
Yeah,
teachers, and
yeah.
therefore draw to their attention the fact that that is the sort of stuff we need to be able to do to be a leader.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's a beautiful point to say. Take into the next question, which is about, that building that community, building that mentorship and that partnership of how we support each other, and building networks and coalitions of women, and that kind of stuff. So, what would you like to share about that,
I would
Meenah?
like to share that it's a fantastic part of the job. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic part of our world. May I say, as leaders in schools, you could well be far too busy to think you have time to do that. But may I also
Yeah.
say that you will be better at it if you make time to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
If you make time to provide yourself with space to think, you will not only do your job better, but you will build better relationships. And let's face it, it's all about the relationships in every school. And you'll
Yeah.
have a lot of fun.
It's true. It is true. It is true. And I think we need that. We need that, as you said, I mean, all of us in general, but women in particular tend to have that self-doubt, and we have heard about that imposter syndrome, all of those kind of things creep in. And I know I have had my fair share of that. And even every now and then I do that as well. And so, and having that support around us, having that network around us, is actually really beneficial. And to just a place to sometimes it's a place to seek guidance. Sometimes it might be a place just to vent. because we all need that from time to time.
For sure. And the other thing I encourage people to do is, it's great to go out with your girlfriends or your friends or your mates or whatever, but at some stage, set a time when you just spend 5 minutes talking one-on-one to someone about what you've noticed that they do amazingly well. Because we never go out to our mates and say, gee, you are such a great mum, or, you know, we don't do that. And yet
No, we don't. You're right,
if
actually.
you look at what people manage on their way to work, they might have an hour and a half or two of work before they get to work. Then they do their work where they build the knowledge in the children, they care for the kids, they do all of those things. Then they go home and do another job, and then they might even have more work after that. If we can just capture that, it helps to deal with that self-doubt. When people looked, and heaven knows, self-doubt was was this on this shoulder for most of my I'm just getting used to throwing it off. But I say to people, go home and write down the 15 things you are most proud of and keep it there. And you can look back and think of the astounding things that you've done. Really. Just, for example, yourself, you've migrated. And set up a family. All these things are enormous. And the work that you do, and, you know, the children. How are your darling children?
They are good. They are good. They're doing well. And it is, sometimes it does feel that you're having multiple jobs, you know, when you are working through all of that. Having a child in year 12 and year 7 this year, so the two ends of high school, you know, so you are managing and all of that. But you are right. You're right. I think sometimes we need to stop and just reflect on, and not just ourselves, but we need to do that for our colleagues. And we have to say that, as you say, that, hey, geez, you were an amazing woman, or that lesson you did was just out of the park, you know, and I'll love the way you managed that meltdown there, student meltdown there, or anything like that. It's all of those little things that add up.
That we just assume we all know how to do because we've done them for so long. And even also with our children, you know, acknowledging what a great job our kids are doing in year 12 or year 7, or in any, in my case, you know, my son's a teacher, he's amazing. My daughter's, in my view, I might be biased, my daughter's currently a young mum, and she and her hubby are amazing. And acknowledging what they do is really important, and what they bring into your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, go.
No, that's it.
Okay. No, I think we have touched on, you know, for the audience, and we have 9 people in audience today. We're slowly growing, Meenah. So, we did, for the audience, just letting you know, I did start off by thinking I'll have this list of questions, but I knew that our conversation will guide us towards the questions. So, you know, and that was what we wanted to achieve today. Just a note on that Tracy was supposed to join us, but she couldn't join us for personal reasons. So we will catch hold of Tracy another day and ask her on some things that she's passionate about. So coming back to what we're talking now, I guess we're towards the wrapping up stages now, but I wanted to ask, what would be your advice for a young teacher who has had a few years of teaching, who's probably not sure whether...
Yes, I can hear you now. Yep, you're back.
Okay, thank you. So a young teacher who has just probably had a few years of classroom teaching, who is not sure whether she wants to go into leadership or she should, and then we have touched on that a little bit, but what would be your advice, and how would you support that teacher?
Okay, I would be asking that teacher what he or she wanted to achieve and their why. You've got to understand their purpose. Each of us needs to understand our purpose. Once we find our purpose, it's so much easier. We just move along that
Yeah.
path. I guess
Yeah.
for me, it's a passion, and I think for many, many young teachers I meet and people in the profession, it's such a passion. I went and caught up with a friend
Yeah.
for coffee this morning at 10:15. You can do that when you're not a principal. And we talked and talked and talked, and the passion in our voices about the work that we do in
Yeah.
schools and with the people we work with, and how in awe of the leaders in
Mm.
schools that we work with we are.
Yeah.
I think I would encourage them to follow that sort of a pathway. The other thing is
Yeah.
that self-doubt. With self-doubt, it's really important to uh, remember that our emotions are a guide, but they are not
Mm.
necessarily what is real. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you have negative self-talk, if you doubt yourself, good idea to write down what that is and go, okay,
Mm.
that's what went through my head, but what is the reality? If I was looking from somewhere
Yeah.
else, what would I actually see? And do a
Yeah.
reality check. Do it with your friends if you like. Um, just
Mm.
don't let that negative self-talk or that self-doubt take over, because
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
uh, that can just be so destructive for your self personally,
Absolutely.
but also
Yeah.
don't feel afraid to have a go. You know, and
Yeah.
respect others when they have a go. It's really
Yeah.
it's really only by taking risks and having a go. And look, I'm sure you would people people would know. I am not proud of some of the things I've said and done in my teaching because I felt under so much pressure, and pressure and
Yeah.
stress is toxic, and therefore you come toxic.
Yeah.
However, if you can alleviate that and minimize that toxicity, build on the positive stuff, and it's not that airy
Yeah.
fairy, it's actually scientifically proven. And trust in yourself. Learn, have the most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. Know
Absolutely.
yourself, discuss things with yourself, find ways of making, and feel free to say no to other people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You are hitting all the tick boxes, Meena, there, because you're hearing what you're saying is music to my ears because that's exactly what is needed. And you know my journey, and you know I wouldn't be here now if it was not for those taking those risks. If it was not for taking those risks, in spite of having the doubts that I had and I continue to have, and you know, not none of us are perfect. We learn, we make mistakes, we grow neurons, and we make connections, and you know, we learn on the way. But you know, if that's the passion, because again, at the end of the day, it comes back to that passion, and that's what you know I've seen in you, and I know you have seen in me as well. If you have that passion, then I think it is something that you need to go for.
Yes, yeah. And then
Absolutely,
it's not so much
absolutely.
work, it's what you love. Mm.
It is what you love, right? I know that, you know, that Japanese word ikigai. It's that ikigai, you know, that balance between what you love and what you do and your work and everything. Oh my goodness, Meena, I didn't even realize how the time went. We have like gone through half an hour of our
Yeah.
discussion. We haven't had any people putting any questions yet, but that's fine. I think people were just engrossed in our discussion, and we were so I guess they would have loved hearing our perspectives and you know the way we shared our experiences, a little bit about each other as well, and we spoke about the topic that is close to both our hearts, which is about women and empowering women and women in educational leadership. So I do want to thank you. I do want to thank you for your time and generosity today and for your insights. I do want to thank the audience as well for joining from wherever you have joined us. And, you know, we have discussed so many things today. We have talked about women in leadership. We have talked about the bias we see sometimes. And we talked about the challenges women face, like imposter, you know, self-doubt for a lot of the times, other barriers, you know, and all of those kind of things. So there's a lot we have covered in this half an hour. As we wrap up this discussion, I am reminded of of a quote from Sheryl Sandberg, who says, "In the future, there will be no female leaders; they will just be leaders." And I think that's what we are trying to achieve. So we do have a long way to go for that, but I'm sure that it
And
will happen. So Meenah, any last words you want to say
I just
before we
want to
sign
say
off?
thank you to Padma and Anita for their beautiful comments. Did you see them come up?
Oh,
Oh,
they have. Oh, I just
that
saw
just
that.
makes me so happy. And
It does. It does. Thank you, ladies, for joining in and listening in. And stay tuned, because I will soon reveal what will our next discussion be, and you will see who that expert is. It might again be Meenah, because she has been so lovely that I might just feel like a monthly chat with her every month. So Meenah, be prepared for that, or it might be someone else. But then, until then, happy International Women's Day. Thank you and
thank
good
you. Good
night.
night.